Hey everyone, we're on to the next chapter of U squared, the high velocity formula for multiplying personal effectiveness in quantum leaps by Price Pritchett. And today in this video, we're going to look at thinking beyond what common sense would allow. And this U squared is it's in a manual for creating quantum leaps in our results. So creating exponential gains in our results and achieving goals way beyond what we would normally consider to be possible. And the book teaches us, shows us it gives us a plan how to readjust our mental thinking, the way that we think, the way that we behave, the way that we approach goal achievement and behavior in general. And it's an amazing book, and it's got some fantastic information in it. So we're going through one chapter at a time in each video, and I'm sharing the insights that I get from it as well. So I hope you enjoy this, and we're going to start now with thinking beyond what common sense would allow. So most of us can be found flying too close to the ground. Too often we don't give ourselves permission to soar. It's time to start focusing on possibilities rather than on limits or obstacles. Making a quantum leap means moving outside of your mental boundaries. If you rethink how you're thinking, you can multiply your performance potential. You must let your desires guide you instead of allowing yourself to be boxed in by perceived constraints. So it's time to start focusing on possibilities rather than on limits or obstacles. So we live in a universe that's that's governed by a law, cause and effect. So for every action there is a reaction, for every cause there is an effect, and for every equal there is an opposite. So our thoughts are the start of the chain of cause. Thoughts are real things, and the thoughts that we have create an equal and opposite reaction. And what he's saying here is that when we focus on possibilities rather than limits or obstacles, it's time to start focusing on possibilities rather than limits or obstacles, because we get what we think about. If we're looking to make a quantum leap and the only thing that we can see is the reasons why we can't do it, then it's very unlikely, in fact, it's completely unlikely that it's going to happen. The first step mentally to creating the success in the material world that we want is to start directing our focus towards the possibility, and the possibility of it being a reality, not all of the problems that could stop it from coming into existence. So it says making a mental leap means moving outside of your mental boundaries. If you will rethink how you're thinking, you can multiply your personal potential. So this multiplication of our personal potential is going to come from getting away from our conventional thought patterns. We have to be willing to let go of what we know, willing to unlearn what we've learned, and to adopt new patterns of thinking that is going to allow us to multiply our performance potential. You must let your desires guide you instead of allowing yourself to be boxed in. Seeking the quantum leap means violating the boundary of the probable. It means achieving well beyond the obvious. So don't limit your desires to what you think you can have. Start going after what you want. This means you must give yourself permission to dream, to risk. You must set yourself free. So when you decide what this quantum leap is going to be, and everybody has a quantum leap that they want to make in their life, no matter where they are, there's always an exponential jump that everybody would like to make, be it in their finances, their relationships, their health, their well-being, contribution, whatever it is. He's saying here that give yourself permission to dream, to risk. Allow yourself to set yourself free to imagine the possibility of this actually happening. So the first step here is we're really allowing the acceptance mentally of the possibility of this happening. 10 or 20% improvement isn't the idea at all. That would represent only incremental gains. That might be an impressive performance in some situations, like if there was an unusual obstacle or a very difficult set of circumstances. But while such a goal might be challenging, it would not represent a quantum leap. Instead of an additional 10% or so, a quantum leap produces a dramatic and multiple gain, an exponential increase. Quantum leaps are by definition rather astounding and certainly unconventional. Don't get the idea that absolutely anything that you can think of is possible, because it isn't. But in some areas of your life, what lies within your reach is enough to stagger the mind. You can double your level of success, triple it, and far beyond that. You can leverage up your performance to the second or third or fourth power or beyond. So this is really the idea behind the quantum leap here, is that don't get the idea that absolutely anything you can think of is possible. We're not going for crazy, stupid ideas, because it isn't. But what we're saying is, what Price Pritchett is saying is that in some areas of your life, what lies within your reach is enough to stagger the mind. So in some areas, we are massively underperforming in our potential and our performance. You can double your level of success, triple it, far beyond that. True, there are limits, but you don't need to worry about them. Your real limits are far beyond your artificial mental barriers. So let's start thinking about our mental barriers, like our current thinking patterns, as being extremely limited, and that we're going to break free from those barriers, and the actual ceiling of potential that we have is way beyond that, and the goal is to move into those areas and create these exponential gains. He says the real limits won't box you in, but the false ones you're carrying around in your mind are a self-imposed prison. So how do you break out of the jail? Through surrender. You have to forfeit some of your old beliefs and sacrifice some of those sensible thinking patterns. So I've been studying the 11 Forgotten Laws, and I've been listening to Bob Proctor as well, the talking about these. I've got his program and I've been studying that, and he talks about the law of sacrifice, and he said this is one of the most misunderstood laws. It's not about sacrificing one thing. It's not about having to sacrifice to have something else. It's about letting go of a lower nature to make room for a higher nature. So this is how I like to look at this now, with this law of sacrifice. In order to create these higher levels of success, these exponential gains, these quantum leaps, we're going to have to sacrifice some of our old beliefs, which is exactly what he says here. You have to forfeit some of your old beliefs and sacrifice those sensible thinking patterns. So how do we break out of jail? Through surrender. We have to let them go. We have to let go the ideas that are keeping us where we are, because as long as we hold on to those, then we're going to continue to stay in the same place. It's like the story of I think it might have been in Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I'm not sure, but he talks about the fish like clinging on to the river, the stone in the river, and fighting against the current, and eventually he lets go and realizes that he's got a white knuckle ride that's like completely exhilarating and exciting and enjoyable, and he wonders why all that time he was clinging on to the rock. And it's the same here. We have to let go of the rock and start to go with the current and the flow, and allow the current to take us with it. And later on in this book, he talks about a quantum leap not being about, it's about jumping and landing. It's not about worrying about the middle part of the journey. We just ride that. We just get on the wave and we just go with it. So you have to forfeit some of the old beliefs and sacrifice some of those sensible thinking patterns. So-called common sense can be a curse and puts a ceiling on how far you can reach and how far you can fly. The quantum leap strategy is based on uncommon sense. So that's the end of that chapter. It's again really talking about creating the conditions for the right mindset to be able to move forward and do this, and that really is this understanding that we're going to have to sacrifice some of the ideas that we've got now about what's possible, and just allow new ones to take their place, and to let ourselves just go with the flow with this, allow ourselves to enjoy the ride, and just to go with the possibility, I guess. So that's the end of this chapter. If you like this, please subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next chapter.